to see you guys. Happy summer, kind of. We had like a week of like 70 degrees, and then it went from 70 degrees to like 95 and humid in like a day. So this is Northern Virginia for us, but we're glad that you chose to be here this morning. And we're excited. We've been doing a series called A Journey with Jesus. And I pray that it's been a blessing to you. And it's been a blessing for me, and I know it has been for Scott, just diving into these stories of these interactions with the 12 disciples and this rabbi who called them to come and follow and to see the ups and downs and the joys and the thrill rides and the sad moments and the fear-filled moments that are a part of their story, knowing that as we journey with Jesus, we have a lot of the same kind of moments. And so I hope that there's been some identification for you and a chance for you to say, hey, wow, like I never really went through that text, and man, this is really meaningful to me. So one of my pet peeves, and it's a low-key pet peeve, it's not really a big deal to me, but it's the misuse, overuse maybe, but misuse of the word miracle, right? Do you guys know what I'm talking about when I say that? Like, we call things miracles all the time, and they're not really miracles at all, right? For example, like a baby's born, right? A tiny baby, a cute baby. Yeah, let's put a picture up there. We all like, ooh and awe, right? So cute. And then somebody will always blurt out, oh, what a beautiful tiny miracle. Right? Now, there have been miraculous births in history, right? And Sarah getting pregnant at the age that she did in the Old Testament, we talked about that, the virgin birth. And there are times where families may pray out to God for years looking for a child, and then God finally delivers. And sure, he may act in space and time, but generally speaking, a baby, no matter how cute or precious or tiny, not a miracle. Do you know why? I can explain how it got here. I won't explain how it got here. But I can't explain how it got here. But here's another one. Do you know what event is depicted in this photo? Anybody? Anybody want to shout it out, Kevin? Miracle on Ice. That's right. 1980, Lake Placid. Now, as much as the odds were stacked against them, a powerhouse Russian team filled with professional hockey players, and this American, because at that point in history, professionals couldn't play for Canada or America for our hockey teams, and so this group of amateurs going up against them, as much as the odds were stacked against them, not a miracle, they just scored more goals than the other team. By the way, do you know how painful it was for me personally to use this illustration? But your daughter finally cleans her room, right? Unprompted. Not a miracle. Your entire family dressed and ready for church early and all in a good mood. And you're like, whoa, it's a miracle. Not really. You get every light green on the way to work. Yeah, somebody said, it's got to be. Right? Not even that. You know why? Because as awesome as those experiences may be, they don't defy the laws of nature. They're not acts of God. Improbable, maybe. Miracles? No. Will you bow your heads and pray with me this morning? Father, may the words of my mouth and the meditation of our hearts be acceptable in your sight. O Lord, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. I think maybe that's why Jesus was so impressive to me, right? Because he displayed the ability to do things that could not be explained by science and could not be explained by just trickery or craftiness or illusion. When he did things labeled miracles, like miracles are exactly what they were. Walking on water, turning water into wine, bringing dead people back to life, telling storms to shut up, and they do. Reading people's thoughts, feeding 5,000 with just a couple loaves and some fish. Like those were events in which God acted in space and in time, and he altered history, and he defied the laws of nature. They were miracles. I mean, you think about all the miracles that he performed, right? We've covered a number of them in this series, and I love to ask, I've done this with students, if you were able to have the ability to perform one of the kind of miracles that he did for the rest of your life, like if you could choose one of those powers, which power would you choose, right? And I'm guessing for a lot of us, because we've had family members that have gotten ill, and for a lot of us, we'd probably like, I want the ability to heal. I could put hospitals out of business. We could put insurance companies out of business, and all of the people that we could help. And I can't blame you if that's your answer. But here's my question. Have you been to the grocery store lately? Like, what is a dozen eggs now? $10? A T-bone steak, like $30? A bag of beef jerky, like $95? Like, if you go to the grocery store right now, Emily and I were talking about this last night, everything is so expensive. I have to go with the feeding of 5,000 because of the size of my family, right? Look, could you imagine if everything you brought at the grocery store, and here's Teeter at Giant Safeway, was bottomless? You pull a carton of eggs out of the fridge, you pull one egg out, poof, there another one pops up. Or you're pouring milk for your kids and you got the bowls lined up in the morning into their cereal, and you pour a little bit into one and a little bit, and then it's the last drop, but all you got to do is this, and more just keeps coming out. Or you're going through the drive-through line at Chick-fil-A, which when you have 9 people in your family, that gets pretty expensive, right? No worries. I'll just take 1 French fry, 4 nuggets, and 1 pop, please. And then you pass it, and they just pass it around for like an hour till they're all full. Where do I sign up for that miracle? But I've asked kids that question in youth group and stuff, like, what power would you choose? And you get a lot of responses. I want to walk on water. I want to read people's thoughts. I want to be able to control the weather. I want to heal the sick person. I want to raise a dead person back to life. I've heard a mix of all of those answers. But in all of the years I've asked that question, I've never had one person say, I want to yell at a tree and kill it. Not even once. But friends, that's the story we're going to dig into today from Mark chapter 11. If you have your Bibles, it also is told in Matthew 21. But we're going to start at verse 12, and it says this. The next day, as they were leaving Bethany, Jesus was hungry. Jesus was hungry. We're going to stop there just for a moment. Because verses like this sometimes, these are the kind of verses we just read and very rarely do we pause to ponder, right? They left town and Jesus was hungry. No big deal, on to the next verse. But I want you to think about the significance of this verse from one perspective, right? The humanity of Jesus. As Christians, sometimes we get all excited about the divinity of Jesus, right? Because he is God, and he walked on water, and he had the power to forgive sins, and all of those impressive things that he did. But we don't talk as much about the humanity of Jesus, that he got sleepy, that late at night he would tell jokes with his disciples, that there were times where he just felt weak and broken down and didn't have enough strength. And some of these examples of humanity not recorded in Scripture, but he stubbed his toe, probably got bitten by mosquitoes, went to the bathroom, all of those things that reveal he's human too. And the Bible doesn't record those things by accident. You see, Jesus was fully God. He was, yes, 100%. The claim he made about himself, I and the Father are one. It's why they hung him on a tree. It's the reason he had power over nature and death and demons. Jesus was fully God. It's how he did the things he did. He was also fully man, right? And Matthew and Mark and Luke and John, they don't hold back. They're littered with examples. He was literally 100% God and 100% man. Not 50% God and 50%. He's not Maui from Moana. He's not like a demigod. He was the real deal, fully man and fully God. So fully man, he fulfilled the law, and fully God, he paid the price. Jesus was hungry. Verse 13. So here's what happens. Seeing in the distance, right, a fig tree. He's like, hey guys, look. He goes over there to find out maybe there's fruit in the tree. And when he reached it, he found nothing but leaves. And then this note, because it was not even the season for figs. Let's stop here for a minute. So Jesus gets all excited, right? And we all know this feeling. You're on a road trip. You've been driving for hours. The kids are complaining. They got to go to the bathroom. Your stomach is growling. And then all of a sudden you come up to an exit, and there's a sign a couple miles before the exit. And it's got like a picture of like the Burger King logo and Taco Bell, McDonald's, and Chipotle. And everyone's like, I want to stop there. I want to stop there. So what are you going to do if you're all craving food? You're going to pull off at the exit, right? You're going to stop and fuel up, so to speak. I mean, growing up, it wasn't like that. So, like, if we traveled anywhere, we took the Trans-Canada Highway, and if there was an exit sign and there was food, off of that exit, there weren't all the opportunities and menus up there on the sign like this restaurant. It was just one little logo with a fork, a spoon, and a knife, right? And you knew that there was probably going to be food there. Now, if you pulled off of that exit and all the kids are fired up and I'm so hungry, Pa, can we stop now? And you pull off and the only restaurant that's there is closed, it's like a disaster, right? And so Jesus does exactly that. He's like, hey, guys, look over there. It's a fig tree, guys. He pulls over to the side of the road and he's starting to drool maybe. He can almost taste the citrusy, subtly sweet figs on his tongue. But as he approaches the tree, his excitement short-lived because he begins to reach up in the leaves and examine it. And much to his dismay, covered in leaves, yes. Filled with figs, no. It's a fruit tree with no fruit. And I have to wonder, right, was Jesus actually surprised by this? I mean, you saw what the author records, it's not even the season for figs. So we're sitting here going, okay, Jesus, well, what did you expect? Have any of you here ever been apple picking with your family? Show of hands, right? There's a lot of apple. You take 66 West, look off to the right, there's some great apple tree farms over there. Let's imagine this. Let's imagine a farmer owns an apple tree farm. And he wakes up one February morning, and it has snowed, and so the trees are covered with this beautiful layer of snow, and it's beautiful. And he's like, honey, I'm going to go for a walk through our farm. And he goes up and down the trees, just admiring the beauty of the snow falling on the trees. But he goes walking for an hour or so, and after an hour or so, he gets a little bit hungry because he's been walking for a while, and his stomach starts to growl. And so he walks up to a tree and says, I could really use an apple. But he walks up to a tree, and there's no apples on this tree. Why? It's the middle of winter. What's the farmer going to do? Cut the tree down? Yell at the tree, why are there no apples on you right now? No, why won't he do any of those things? Because it's not the season for apples, right? And so we're left here going like, what's up here, Jesus? What is really going on? Verse 14, the story gets even weirder. He says this, it records, Jesus then spoke to the tree, all right? He investigates the tree, and now it's time to speak to the tree. No one's ever going to eat fruit from you again, right? And his disciples, it says, heard him say this, which really kind of cracks me up. So he yells at the tree. Let's see if I'm missing anything here. You leave town and you're hungry. You see a fruit tree, and although it's not even the season for that tree to have fruit on it, you approach the tree and look for fruit in the tree. And when there is no fruit, you yell at the tree. I mean, is there anything Jesus does more human than this? We have a term that we use, right, when people get so hungry their behavior's altered. They maybe get grumpy and short-fused. Does anybody know what that term is? If so, shout it out. Hangry, yeah. I call it hanger danger. And when I read this, I can't help but feel he seems a little bit hangry here. If I'm one of the 12, that's probably what's going through my mind, right? John goes out of the way to say, hey, we heard him when he yelled at the tree. We were there. He starts yelling at this tree, and we're like, hey, don't mess with the hangry Jesus. I mean, it's happened to you before, right? Hanger? Anybody? Ever been there? You've been sitting at your desk all day long. Like it's 3 in the afternoon, but lunch feels like it was 2 days ago, right? And you just want to go home and eat supper because your stomach is starting to growl and you've been there all day, but you got a 5 o'clock deadline and all these things stacked up on your desk. And it's just around that time that somebody just walks into your cubicle and starts talking your ear off about random things that mean nothing at all, and you just want to get that work done, and you're so hungry, and you just want to get home. If there were ever a moment that you would lose your cool and snap at a person and regret it later, that would be it. That's the genius behind the old Snickers commercials. You've seen them for years. They did this whole deal where, remember, they'd have this little scene of some guy losing his temper, and then he'd take a bite of the Snicker, and then they'd say, what? You are not you when you're hungry. right? But is that really what's going on here? That's the question. Because if you read on a little bit later, spoiler alert, you find out the tree dies, like Jesus kills the tree. Did he do that just because he was hungry? Did he do it just because he was hangry? Was this an irrational, uninformed, out-of-control Jesus? It's a pretty good question. And I think there may have been a little anger in him, just personally, but I think there's a little bit more going on here than just that. But before we explore that, let's see what happens a day later when we walk by the tree. All right, so for that, you're going to have to jump down to verse 20. It says this, "In the morning," so the next day as they went along, "they saw the fig tree withered from the roots up." Peter remembered and said to Jesus, "Rabbi, look, the fig tree you cursed, it has withered, it's died." Now, before we go any further, we need to note that there's a pretty significant detail difference between the Matthew and the Mark account. So Matthew, in his story, records that the tree withered right away, like Jesus cursed the tree and then the tree withered. Mark says that he cursed the tree and then they go into town, and the next day they come back and they notice the tree is withered. So we have to ask ourselves in moments like this, is this a contradiction of the Bible? Is this where we hit the panic button and go, I don't know, did I choose the wrong faith? Why would Mark say one thing and Matthew another? And there are some things to help us think through that. One answer is that Matthew writes thematically, right? And Mark writes chronologically. In other words, Matthew's more concerned with the themes of events, and he often groups topics together, not so much focusing on the order, while Mark is more concerned in this story with the order. And so if that's what you subscribe to, Mark's is the correct order. Matthew's more worried about the theme. And that's a possible explanation, especially when you consider that Matthew is the briefer account and does kind of lump all of the details into one sentence. The only problem with that explanation, Matthew's use of the word parakrama, right? So that word in the Greek, that word means at once or right away or immediately. And if Matthew wasn't concerned about chronology and only themes, why would he use a word that depicts chronology, right? At once. So that's one explanation. It's within the realm of possibility. Another possibility is that there are two different fig trees that were cursed. To me, that doesn't seem like the most logical option, but it's within the realm of possibility. Another explanation is that in Matthew 21, right, when it records Jesus cursed the tree and it withered right away, we're not told in Matthew 21 how much the tree withered. We're just told it withered. It could be that at that moment it began to show signs of withering, but it wasn't till they came along the next day that they noted that the tree now had withered from the roots up. In other words, the withering was complete and the tree was dead. That's a real possibility as well. And you also have to keep in mind in this that Mark is not one of the 12 disciples, right? Like, he's not one of the 12, so there's a good chance he wasn't even there, and he's sharing information. He's heard from someone who's told someone as he recounts this story of something that Jesus did. But the bottom line is, it's not a contradiction of the Bible. We just can't be 100% certain which one is the right explanation, if that makes sense. But back to the question at hand. Why did Jesus kill the darn tree? I mean, is there more behind this odd use of his power than simply Jesus was hangry? I think so. As a matter of fact, I think it has to do with the leaves on the tree. Because I want you to think about this. If it was too early in the season for figs, could it be that it was too early in the season for this tree to be filled with leaves? So when Jesus sees a fig tree that was filled with leaves, despite it being too early in the season for that to happen, too early in the year, he walks over and examines it. It's like, well, maybe if it's too early for all of these leaves, but they're here, maybe even though it's too early for figs, they'll be there as well. But he walks up to the tree, and guess what? No figs. Let me ask you a question. We'll put our intense thinking caps on. What's the purpose of a fig tree? Anybody? To produce figs, right? So it wasn't fulfilling its purpose. And so Jesus judges the tree and curses the tree and kills the tree. And if you stop and think about this in context, all right, so here's where we get a little bit deeper. And you think about the event that is Oreo cookies, like right in the middle of this. So you have the cursing of the tree, and then you have this event that takes place, and then you have the next day they walk by, and the tree has cursed. It's been withered completely, right? So if you think about the event in the middle of it, it's the cleansing of the temple. Things begin to make a lot of sense in context because Jesus, right, arrives in the temple. And when he walks in, he finds people are literally, they're exploiting one another. They're buying and selling all of these animals, which in a certain area of the temple was customary for people that didn't have farms. They would go in and purchase the animals. But people were charging exorbitant amounts of money, and they were making a profit off of this. And the temple was being disrespected, not treated with a lack of due reverence. And so Jesus comes in and does the whole cleansing of the temple thing. And by the way, in what he was doing, Jesus walks in and is like, this temple was never made for this. This is not the purpose of the temple at all. It is not fulfilling its God-ordained role. And by the way, this one act of cleansing did not change everything that was going on in the temple, but it was an act of righteous judgment, and it would be fulfilled later in 72 AD by the Romans who came in and destroyed the temple completely. But I want you to think about this. Jesus claimed what? That he had authority over the temple. At one point he said, I'll tear this thing down and I will rebuild it in 3 days. He was the high priest. He came down as our high priest. So originally, the temple's purpose was what? It was to be a place where God could be reconciled to his people. Well, think about his death. With his death, Jesus made this reconciliation permanent, right? Because he was now how we're reconciled to God. And so in that moment, like the temple became obsolete. Like the fig tree, the temple would then begin to wither away with no purpose. You see, that fig tree symbolized a rather massive moment in Israel's history, and it symbolized, I believe, what goes on in you and I when we have no purpose, when we lose our purpose. You see, we've been called by God, you and I, to represent him in his kingdom. Each and every one of us who've surrendered to Christ Jesus, that's our purpose, to bring his message to the world, to be servants of the King because we live for him. We have a higher purpose than to just eat, drink, and be merry. Like, our goal is not just to be happy or to enjoy a good life or be good citizens or have a good job and chase the American dream and I have this great family and then we grow old and die. That's not our purpose at all. Now, you may have a good job and you may have a cool family and you may enjoy your life, but your purpose in mind, Matthew 28, go into all the world and make disciples. Your purpose, my purpose, is to bear fruit like the fig tree. And if we do not, Jesus was very clear on this. John 15, Jesus said this, I am the true vine, and my Father is the gardener. He cuts off every branch that bears no fruit, while every branch that does bear fruit, he prunes. That's not always fun, so that it will become more fruitful, right? There's a goal within there. Jump down to verse 5. Jesus said, I am the vine, and you are the branches. If you remain in me, and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. And then this, if you do not remain in me, you are a branch that is thrown away and withers. Such branches are picked up, thrown into the fire, and burned. Mark 11 is this perfect visual illustration for the disciples of this truth. You bear fruit for me, or you don't belong to me. And if you don't belong to me, you're cursed and cut off and destroyed. Because apart from me, you have no purpose. You're like a fig tree with no figs. I see all kinds of leaves. They're real lush and green and pretty. You look good on the outside, but when you look a little deeper, all you are is a show, and you're just an act, and you look the part, but upon investigation, if I dig a little deeper, I'm not seeing a whole lot there. And I'm going to bet in a room this size, there's somebody in this room, if you're honest, that describes you. You're here every week. You know the songs. Maybe you serve in one of the ministry teams, or the kids ministry, or the worship ministry, or tech, whatever it is. And you walk in here and you bear hug friends and you high five, and it's so good to see you, and you bow and we bow and you sing all the words. You've been doing this for years, and maybe you fooled a lot of people because it looks good on the outside. The trouble, you can't fool Jesus. And when he walks up and does his investigation of you, maybe what he finds is this: you're not a follower at all. You're the fig tree in the story. You're not bearing fruit. You just look like it from the outside. You're just all full of leaves and everything. My deck is where things go down, right? For years, members of the church would call me up, and they'd be like, hey, I need some deck time. Can I come over and hang? Or I would call, if I'm going through a time, I'd call a friend over and say, hey, can you come over and hang on my deck? And I need to get some things off my chest. And we'd talk or cry or laugh or encourage or rebuke, whatever it was. I had a friend reach out years ago. I think he was a deacon at the church that I worked at, and he wanted some deck time. And he had just heard a sermon from one of the pastors, and it was about giving. And in the sermon, the pastor dared say that God commands his people to give, right? And so he sat down and was all upset about that. I can't believe it that someone would say that, and how dare he, and giving is between somebody and God, and people should just give if they feel like, and it's like all of this kind of stuff, right? Even in spite of the fact that God does actually command his people to give. But the more we began to talk through things on my deck, and I asked some questions, the picture became clear to me that this man did not have he didn't have a generosity problem. He had an identity problem. You see, he didn't belong to Christ. He grew up in the church, yes. Served as a deacon, yeah. He wore a suit most Sundays, yes. He knew all the songs, yes. Said nice sermon to the pastor most Sundays walking out, yes. Put money in the plate from time to time, yes. Kids went to youth group, yes. Said prayers before every meal, yes. All kinds of leaves on the tree. Looked great on the outside, but upon closer inspection, no fruit there. This man knew a lot about Jesus, but did not know Jesus. He didn't belong to the vine because he wasn't connected to the vine. He was not producing fruit. And we sat there on the deck that night and we talked honestly, and I didn't have to say it. He came to the conclusion himself when I asked questions. He was baptized when he was 7. You know why? His parents told him that's the next step. That's just what you do. He went to youth group and Sunday school as a kid. Why? Because his parents told him to do. It was their idea. He was just going along with the plan. And since they went to church, he did. He learned all the songs, knew all the answers, knew how to act, knew when to stand up, when to sit down. The only problem? He never ever once surrendered his life to Jesus. He was never connected to the vine. He was a fig tree with no fruit. It was on that deck that night where he said for the first time, I'm giving my life to Jesus. And I don't know where all of you are at on this path, on this journey with Jesus, but I have to believe that maybe there's someone in this room, you're just like my friend, you've never embarked on the journey at all. You're not exploring and discovering new things about him every day as you dig into his word and as you worship and try things for him. You're not experiencing life with Jesus. You're just maybe bored to tears even being here this morning. You're just kind of going through the motions. You're just kind of playing the role. You look great on the outside, all kinds of leaves because you're here and you're going along with what everyone else did. But Jesus isn't the reason for your life. He's just an attachment to it. He just makes you feel a little better about things. Maybe you've not even embarked on the journey yet. And if that's the case, there's no greater day than today to begin that journey with Jesus, because when he takes over you and hijacks you and you're connected to the vine, things start going to change inside of you, and things are going to start happening around you that can only be explained by one thing, and that's you're connected to Jesus. Have you ever embarked on that journey with Jesus? back to the story because Jesus concludes this fantastic lesson in verse 22, right? So you have the disciples, and they see the tree wither and die, and they're a little bit confused by this. They're a little bit just in awe. Once again, it's something Jesus did, and we read this. Truly, I tell you, Jesus said, have faith in God. In this, he said, I tell you the truth, if any of you say to this mountain, go, throw yourself in the sea, and does not doubt in his heart, but believes it is going to happen, it will be done for him. Therefore, I tell you, whatever you ask in prayer, believe that you have received, and it will be yours. And so when his disciples, who, by the way, have seen every kind of illness healed by now, who have seen, when you think about 5,000 plus women and kids, 20,000 people fed by a Happy Meal? Demons being cast out of people, dead people raised back to life, members of their inner circle walk on water and sea and wind obey the rabbi's voice. His disciples are somehow once again astonished that Jesus was able to kill a tree. And so Jesus sees this and uses this moment once again to make the same point he's been trying to make all along. This is not just something I can do. In me, this is something you can do. Let me say that again. This is not, guys, you've seen so much, and I've been trying to get this through your this is not just something why are you staring at me with eyes wide open, jaws to the ground, like you can do this in me too? I tell you the truth, he said, if you have faith, if you truly believe, there's no shred of doubt. You could walk up to any mountain and say, hey, mountain, guess what? It's time to move. And it would move. You could move that mountain. How many people here actually believe that moving a mountain is something you could do? Actually believe it. Like if you were to walk over to the Shenandoah Mountains today and stand at the foot of the mountain and be all right, like we sometimes talk about faith and we say, yeah, it's so great that God could do it, but if we ask ourselves honestly and we think about what's inside of us, really, there are sometimes like this lack of faith. Do you know what the highest point on the earth is? Anybody? Mount Everest stands at a height of 29,029 feet. Above sea level, it's the highest point in the world. That's pretty high, right? 29. Does anybody know what the deepest part of the ocean is? The Mariana Trench dips down to a depth of 36,200 feet, right? What that means is this. That's almost 7 miles deep, just so you know. That means if you one day were standing at the base camp of Everest, and you're feeling all close to God and all spiritual, and you're like, this is the moment I'm going to test that promise in Scripture that Jesus gave to me. And you were to stand at the base of Everest and look up and be like, hey, Everest, guess what? It's moving day, right? First of all, you're not going to make friends with the local Sherpas because they kind of use Everest as their source of income and their livelihood. But here's what it means. If you were to say to that mountain, okay, time to go into the sea, it could actually fit with like 7,000 feet to spare. But we all know this. Math is not the problem. Lack of faith is the problem. You remember what Jesus said in John 15 about the vine and the branches that we read earlier? If you're connected to me, right, you're going to bear fruit. And if you're not connected to me, you're going to wither. Like that fig tree, like you're just going to wither and you're cut off and all that kind of stuff. Do you know what Jesus said right after that? The same thing he said right after the fig tree withered. Look what he said. He said this, verse 7, if you remain in me, ask for whatever you wish and it will be given to you. Jesus said, I don't get it. You're like so impressed that this fig tree withered. You're like, oh, ooh, ah, this is amazing, Jesus. Don't be. Because if you truly believed in me, you would have said the same thing to the tree and it would have happened right before your eyes. The only thing missing, he said, is your faith. And I think this is where I want to kind of park the car this morning. Because no matter where you are on this journey with Jesus, I mean, that's a big question, right? Where is my faith? Dr. Stephen, not like worship pastor Stephen. Dr. Stephen was a well-known doctor. And he was super excited because he got invited to this conference and had done a whole lot of medical research and was going to receive a very prestigious award. And so wanting to get there early, he didn't want to miss the flight. He caught an airplane going off to that destination. He just wanted to receive that award, the validation for the years of hard work put into everything he had done in that field and in that research. And so he gets on the plane and they're flying towards the destination. However, 3 hours into the flight, the pilot announced there was a problem with the plane and there was going to be an emergency landing at a local airport, and they land, and frantically, he doesn't want to miss this conference. He runs up to the nearest help desk and he says to the lady standing there, "You need to tell me, what is the next flight? I need to be on that plane. I'll pay whatever the price. I have this conference and it's super important that I be there." And the lady looked at him and said, "I'm sorry, the next flight is not for another 12 hours. But the destination you're going to is just a 6-hour drive from here. I suggest you maybe rent a car and you can get there in time for your conference." And so reluctantly, not wanting to drive, he did rent the car. And so Dr. Stephen rented the car and began his journey in the car to the destination. But about an hour into the journey in his car, a storm rolled in, and there was thunder and lightning, and visibility was down, and rain was coming down in sheets, and he got a little bit disoriented and made a couple wrong turns. And before he knew it, he's driving around and he doesn't know where he is, and he's on what seems to be some kind of a deserted street with not a lot, and he's terrified and tired at this point. He finally looks over and he sees an old tattered house on the side of the road, and so he parks the car, tired and wet. He walks up to the front door and knocks, hoping that somebody's there. And a moment or two later, an older lady opened the door of the house, to which she explained the situation and the flight and the getting lost and the rental car. And do you have a telephone I could borrow? I have to call. I have to find a way to get there. To which the elderly lady said, "I don't have a phone here. I don't even have electricity, but it's awfully bad weather out here. Why don't you come inside and I'll pour you a cup of hot tea and give you some food and you can dry off before you get back on the road again." And so tired and weary from the journey, he decided to take the woman up on her offer and walked into the house. And she put some tea down and she put some food down and then said, "Sorry, sir, but I have to excuse myself to finish my evening prayers." And she went to the next room. And Dr. Stephen watched as this elderly lady sat for what seemed like hours, praying next to what appeared to be a small crib next to her. And she would pray and pray and pray, and then it looked like she was done, and she would lift her head, and then no sooner did she lift her head, she would get her head back down and start praying again. And he watched and wondered as she prayed, and finally, when she finished praying, sensing that the woman might be in some kind of need and maybe need help from him, the doctor gently told her, "Well, I hope God answers whatever it is that you were praying for." To which she said, "Oh, sir, God has answered all of my prayers except one. And I don't know why he's not answered this one prayer yet, but I know one day he will." And the doctor said, "Do you mind telling me then what the issue is?" Nodding her head, she told him that the crib she was praying over, that it was her grandson in the crib, and her grandson had a rare form of cancer, and that all the doctors that they have been to were unable to treat her grandson. But she said she had been told that there was a doctor who could treat her grandson that specializes in this type of cancer, but they don't have a lot of resources, and they're very poor. And so she's been praying and praying. She said, "God, I've been praying to God day and night for God to find a way to get me to Dr. Stephen, the doctor who could treat my grandson." And she said these words, tears rushed down the doctor's cheek. And he said to her, "Your God is good, and he does answer. In fact, I was on a plane, but there was a problem with the plane, so I rented a car, but I got lost in the storm, and I ended up at your door." And all of this happened because God did not just answer your prayer by finding a way for you to get a hold of Dr. Stephen. God answered by bringing Dr. Stephen to you. Friends, to be honest, I love this story. I can't verify are all of the details exactly as I shared true. I don't know, but I do know this. I know of a God who could pull that off. And I know of a God who acts in time and history and moves mountains in people's lives. And when people cry out to God in faith, that God answers. You see, for those who believe, if this book is true, for those who know Jesus, who are connected to Jesus, in him you will bear much fruit. Anything you ask can be given, can happen if you believe. So the question today is this. It's not what can God do. That's not the question. We already know the answer to that. The question is this. Do you believe what God can do through you? Will you pray? Father in heaven, over and over in your word, we read about the miracles that you performed, the things that you did, and then we read about your followers doing the same things, and from Old Testament all the way through, Father, we see your power at work. And it's our confession that sometimes we look around at our lives and we feel anything but power. And it's my confession, Father, that when there's a lack of God activity in my life, it's not because there's a lack of you. Because in you, I am complete. In Christ Jesus, I have all I need. Your Spirit is in me. But where is my faith? Where is my faith? Do I read those words and wonder, could it be true? Or do I actually believe, by golly, it is true? So my prayer today for everyone in this room is that you would trouble us with that, and you would haunt us with that, and you would keep us up at night wrestling with that. As small as mustard seed. Hey, Everest. Moving day. Do something in us and among us